Bibliophiles of the internet, my name's Adriana, and today I'm here to finally bring you my December wrap-up. Fair warning, this might be a long video because I did read quite a few things in December, but also because I have very strong feelings. The first book I read in December was a reread for me, and that was The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. This is a YA paranormal story set in a world where vampirism is classified as an epidemic worldwide. Everybody knows about it, and it's considered a contagious disease, which has resulted in the advent of cold towns. Cold towns are basically quarantine zones to hold people who have been turned as well as people who have been bitten but haven't completed the transformation yet. The story begins with our main character Tana waking up the morning after a rager to find out that everyone else who attended this party is now dead, and the only other survivor she can find is her ex-boyfriend Aiden, who has been bitten and left tied up as bait. But bait for who? Or what? They end up falling in with a vampire named Gabrielle, and they decide among themselves that the best plan is to drive to the nearest cold town, turn themselves in, and fast. Reading this again really just validated the torch I've been carrying for this book all these years, how strongly I felt about it, and the fact that I always considered it good enough to stay on my shelves. When all is said and done, it's such a compelling, engaging narrative that blends vampire lore, mythology, history, modern-day obsession with vampirism, and uses all these things to deliver a dark, exciting story. Tana is a character I feel very strongly about. She knows exactly what she wants, what she needs to do, what it takes to survive, and she will not allow anyone to sway her from her course. But I wouldn't call it stubbornness, but rather a marrow deep understanding of who she is fundamentally, and she's able to realize that it's not something to compromise. And I've always been appreciative of her love interest, Gabrielle, who is a monster, who is monstrous, but makes no allusions to being otherwise. Not only does Tana refuse to romanticize vampirism, but Gabrielle refuses to romanticize himself, and he makes it clear that any attraction he feels towards her won't fundamentally alter his true nature. Loving him won't make him become a good guy. And when you juxtapose his character with Aiden's, who is a really compelling bisexual bad boy type character within his own right, it becomes that much more interesting because you realize that when they were dating, Aiden was more monstrous to Tana than Gabrielle, a real-life monster, ever is. And even though Gabrielle puts his own agenda first, he still treats Tana with respect. It's a really great story. I haven't even done it justice. I didn't get to talk about the writing, the imagery, the atmosphere, but it's a story I feel very strongly about, and it gives you a lot to consider as a reader, and for those reasons I gave this book once again 5 stars. After that, I listened to books 5, 6, and 7 in the How to Train Your Dragon series by Cressida Cowell, read by David Tennant. This is a middle-grade fantasy adventure series that chronicles the early years of Hiccup Herandus Haddock III, heir to the Harry Hooligan Viking tribe and future Viking legend. However, as a youngster, Hiccup is basically one of the most disgraced and ridiculed Vikings in his tribe. He's tiny, skinny, clumsy, non-violent, bookish, uncharismatic, which doesn't bode well in a culture that values brute strength and physical power over thoughtfulness and cleverness. With every installment, I love this series more and more, and I just don't know what else to say. It's such a wonderful, empowering story which celebrates the unlikeliest heroes coming together and accomplishing incredible things. I think it's a story that keeps bringing me back because the characters thrive where they're expected to fail. It would be so easy to lose faith and give up when everybody writes you off and believes you're never going to be good enough. At that point, you could just walk off and give the people what they want. These characters don't let other people dictate their limits, which is a really admirable trait. And of course, David Tennant's narration is worthy of every award in existence. That man casts his voice here, there, and everywhere. If the story calls for singing, he sings. If the story calls for poetry, the man doth recite. His dynamics, his vocal range, no one else even compares. I gave these books respectively 4.5, 4.5, and 5 stars. After that, I read volumes 8, 9, and 10 of Boku no Hero Academia, or My Hero Academia by Horikoshi Kohei. I've been talking about this manga series for a while. It's a shonen series about a young boy, Midoriya, who lives in a world where almost everyone displays superpowers or quirks, but he is actually quirkless. One day he runs into his idol, All Might, who sees Midoriya's passion for humanity and the strength of his heart, and decides to pass on his legendary quirk One for All to Midoriya, which earns him a chance to attend UA, an elite school for the next generation of heroes. With these volumes, I have officially surpassed where Season 2 left off, and the stakes just keep getting higher and higher. The series continues to outdo itself. I love how this series celebrates both the individual and the collective. There's an acknowledgement that the growth these characters have achieved is because of their families, their teachers, their peers, but to take it to the next level is a responsibility that is theirs alone. It's something they can only push for themselves. And in these volumes especially, the series examines how in this world where so many people have access to so many different kinds of quirks, sometimes the difference between good and evil is a perspective or merely a choice. It's so fascinating to see why these characters choose to be heroes and to see if that's a choice they're going to continue to make. All of these volumes are exemplary, and I gave each and every one of them 5 stars. Then I listened to one of my new favorite books, Ailment by Fiona Mosley, read by Joe Jameson. This was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize in 2017. It's a quiet, subtle story about a small Irish family. There's a father with violent tendencies who used to be a fighter in his heyday, and now he's raising his 2 children in a small house he built with his own 2 hands. Their copse is very remote, very removed from town people and society, purposefully so because this father wants his kids to grow up organically outside of the limitations, rules, and expectations dictated by society so that they can have the chance to grow up free and to fully discover themselves on their own terms. And the story is very much about how people are threatening to challenge and snuff out this lifestyle no matter the consequences. Like I said in my last book haul, it's a quiet tour de force of a story that just builds and builds and builds on itself. It's an incredibly powerful book that succeeds in ways I don't even think I can explain. I love the choice of narrator because I'm always drawn to stories where the main character is almost peripheral. They're not always directly involved with the action of the story, but things that affect people in their life affect them viscerally, so the dynamicism is slightly removed, but everything feels very close. The main character and narrator, Daniel, is able to hold the story together because he's so innocent. Every page is almost like life is happening to him for the first time, and he's having to reconcile his sheltered lifestyle with all the ways the world encroaches on his family and the life they've made for themselves. He's also in a really unique position because all his life no one's ever told him what he should or should not do, or what he should or should not be. He wears tight pants and short shirts that expose his skin. He lets his hair and nails grow long in a way that would be called feminine. He allows himself to be attracted to men. In a way, he really is free of the shame and guilt that so many of us are taught. To him, the concept doesn't even exist. But through the actions of his father and his sister, he's still coming to understand his place. Kathy, his sister, is also a really compelling character. I connected with her right away because she always talks about what it's like to live in a world dominated by men, where men have the power to decide and enforce arbitrary rules as they see fit, a world where she feels restricted and hunted every day of her life. In a way, she's the reason why their father took them to the middle of nowhere and started a life where they depended on no one but themselves, because he wanted to create a place where she didn't have to feel that way. But even their copse is not safe from the prying eyes and hands of men who are not content to leave that personal space undisturbed. The father is also a complex character because he's described as violent as a fighter, and even now he occasionally goes out and beats people half to hell just to keep order and protect those he cares about. He always feels like a ticking time bomb, like he could go off at any second, but that's undercut by the softness he shows towards his family and friends. Once someone worms their way into his heart, he'll do anything for them, and he cares deeply in his own way. And I think that's the tipping point. The story explores all these different forms of violence that people can inflict on each other, but sometimes it's forcing yourself into someone's life where you're not wanted that can be the most common act of violence. I could go on for hours and hours, but needless to say, this was a tremendous story. I highly recommend the audiobook as well. I gave this one 5 stars. After that, I finally read Quests for Glory by Somen Chainani. All I can say about this is that it's a continuation of the School for Good and Evil series. It follows all the main characters during their 4th year, which is the year where each student is assigned a quest, and the only way to formally complete their education is to see this quest through. I really enjoyed getting to come back to this world and see all my favorite characters continuing to come into their own and grow. Over the course of this series, Somen Chainani has deconstructed quote-unquote binary relationships in each book. Good and evil, boys and girls, old and new, and now truth and lies, and of course he does that very well. He takes these binary concepts that seem like opposites and shows his audience how they overlap, how they're more similar than you would think, and he always strives to blur the lines between the two. So that was this book's strong point. point, I think, that it shows how in this time where these characters don't know who to trust or what to believe, they can only overcome their obstacles together. They are stronger when they unite. While I think this installment had some pacing issues and was maybe a little too binary at times despite its attempts to decouple binary thinking, overall I enjoyed it and I'm curious to see how the story continues. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read volumes 1 and 2 of Giant Days, illustrated by Lissa Treyman and written by John Allison. This is a slice-of-life graphic novel series about 3 girls in university who meet before school starts, and the series wonderfully chronicles all their hilarious shenanigans. This is such a delightful, refreshing series. The dynamic between these friends is so magnetic and full of positive energy. They couldn't be more different, but there's still room enough for all their personalities to shine. I like that they don't try to change each other. They just accept each person for who they are. And I also love that no problem is too big or too small for this series to explore, whether it's getting sick in the middle of school, dreading hometown visits, cramming right before finals, dating, everything is of interest. When you think about it, what these characters are going through is what everybody goes through, but they handle it with such levity in a way that makes sense for them and disregards what anybody else thinks. I really cannot emphasize enough how funny this series is. It has fantastic one-liners, the dialogue is clever as hell, and that close-knit dynamic is what really keeps you coming back. Also, so far, one of the main characters is queer, which is a really great bonus. These volumes were both exceptional, and I have now prioritized catching up with this series more than any other. I gave both of these trades 5 stars. And then my 12th poetry collection for 2017 was Black Book of Poems by Vincent K. Hunanyan. This collection is difficult to sum up. It doesn't follow any one theme, and it doesn't really have any one idea or concept that holds it all together. I will say that it's very straightforward. It lacks pretense and pretension, which makes it feel more real and more accessible, so that's something I appreciate. I also enjoyed the contrast between the subjects of the poems, which are very personal and modern, and the form itself, which uses alternating rhyme, couplets, enclosed rhyme, and a bunch of other traditional rhyme schemes, which kind of give the impression of being antiquated, so that contrast creates a rich dynamic. My only hang-up is that while I enjoyed reading through this collection, I don't think there was anything particularly memorable about it. I don't think I'll be able to recall the poems even 2 months, 3 months from now, and for that reason I gave this collection 3 stars. And the last book I read in 2017 was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I don't want to talk about this book too much here besides to say that I read it because I kind of already wrote out an entire book review script. I wrote it before I wrote my Best Books of 2017 video or before I wrote my thoughts for this video, so that will definitely be the next video I film and upload to this channel, so watch out for that. But this was a brilliant follow-up to Everything I Never Told You. I have been waiting for this book since 2014, and I can definitively say it was worth every second of that wait. Stay tuned for my full in-depth review, but I will say there was nothing about this I didn't like, and I gave it 5 stars. So those are all the books I read in the month of December. I will say I'm on my way to having a very successful January as well. If you have read and enjoyed any of the books I mentioned in this video, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. But that is everything I have for this wrap-up today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!